Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike with New Hope Network. We're here to help you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today.
What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast, episode 98. Wow, 98. That's pretty amazing. My name is David. I'm glad that you are here with us. As always, with me is Pastor Mike. Hello, Pastor Mike.
I love how you didn't even give me an opportunity to comment on the number of episodes.
No, I just skipped right
he didn't
past
even breathe. There's like no pause. He's not getting a chance.
Episode 98. Do you have a comment?
I actually don't. But
what's your favorite professional athlete to wear number 98? It's going to be some sort of defensive lineman or something.
No. Yeah.
I can't. 98.
I was going to say name one that you would
99 know. Next week. That's John Randall, maybe one of the greatest defensive linemen of all time, Hall of Fame Viking. 98. I'm sure we've had a bunch of them. I just can't think off the top of my head. 98. Not a real common number in any of the other sports.
I'm sure.
Not a lot of baseball players running around with number 98.
Yep.
Maybe hockey. They wear weird numbers in hockey, right?
Pastor Mike, you're asking like I know these
Linval
things.
Joseph wore number 98. Thank you, producer. Appreciate you. Pastor Mike, I will give you $1 American if you can tell me what number Wayne Gretzky wore. It is retired across the entire NHL. Every single team in the NHL, no one can wear that number.
Pastor Kylie would probably know that.
Would
honestly,
you like to guess?
Know.
Take a guess.
I wouldn't know.
So there's
12.
Only so many that are possible. It's number 99.
Oh, okay.
I almost picked a much higher number, but then I was like, I'm saying it on camera, and if you somehow get it right, I don't want to have to give you a lot more money than that. How are you doing? We're at episode 98, Pastor Mike, and we're on to a new series now. Mm-hmm. We're not doing the greatest story ever told anymore. I mean, we kind of are. The greatest story ever told was just the Bible, and I believe you're still preaching out of the Bible. Is that correct?
Every week.
Nailed it. Yep. I feel like that's an important staple that we will continue here at New Hope. Yeah. But it's different now. And
it is.
Yesterday, assuming you're watching this the day that it came out, was Mother's Day.
It was.
So happy Mother's Day to everybody. You're not a mother, so I'm not going to.
What did you do for your mother?
Well,
we're recording this beforehand. So
this is not a live podcast.
What are you going to do? We'll see if you've thought about it.
I'll probably tell her Happy Mother's Day and give her a hearty handshake. Because, Scandinavian, that's as emotional as you're allowed to get.
Right.
So, although she's not she's Dutch.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't really fly. No, I haven't decided yet. We'll get her a card.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing we make sure we do is like FaceTime her with the kiddos. Yeah. I could get her a great present, and I think she would rather have a FaceTime with
my mom,
me and Joanna and the grandkids. But I don't live near my mother, so we won't be like going out to lunch that day. We would usually do a brunch, like a late brunch, because my dad was the pastor, but we would find some place to go have a brunch. My mom's a big brunch fan.
She likes breakfast foods,
but it's not so like a brunch has a combination of the two, so we would always have to find a place you can get brunch at like 2:00 in the afternoon. There were only so many options available. What about you? What's
probably all you can eat places?
What's
like brunch kind of places? Yeah.
No, it was always like the golf course restaurant, or there was this one in Big Lake, which was the town next to where we lived, and it was like I forget what it was something on the lake. I don't know. It was never my favorite place, but my parents love it. It was beautiful. You're right on the lake. I feel like we went there a lot on Mother's Day towards the end of my time in Minnesota. I'm not sure. And then obviously I have a mother-in-law as well, so we'll make sure that I'm sure we'll do something similar. Card, FaceTime.
And the mother of your children.
Not go out to eat. Well, I will probably go out to eat with the mother of my children.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know where. We don't have like a Mother's Day tradition. I don't know. Do you guys have a Mother's Day tradition?
Not really.
No.
Not really. Part of it, we're just so busy. I take that back. We do. But we tend not to do it on Mother's Day because
we have a Mother's Day tradition. We just don't do it.
We'll do it the day before. Or
Hold on. Hold on. If you have a tradition but you just don't do it, does that still count as a tradition?
We don't do it on Mother's Day because we're both so busy.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah. So we'll try and pick another day. But and it's just been maybe for the last 8 years or so.
Okay.
Where we go and we buy all of the flowers for the outdoor pots in our yard.
It's fun.
And in North Dakota, it's a little bit of a challenge because you still have to pull them inside at night, even after Mother's Day.
And you're also not going to have a yard to be Like
where we
ready. Yeah, I mean, you're moving yet, but you won't be there yet on
and it's going to be
Mother's
a
Day.
different climate, so
Yeah, all
I'm
your
not
plants
sure.
from here would die real quick in the desert.
My
You're
lilacs will not survive,
gonna put
and
some
I'm very
cactuses
sad about that.
in your yard. Do you guys are you gonna have like one of those big cactuses? They have a specific name, cacti.
Saguaro, I think it's saguaro.
Yeah, those ones. You're gonna have one of those in your
Those
yard?
are actually protected.
I know.
Yeah,
if
very
you have one of
protected.
those in your yard and
You
you
can never-
and you want to get rid of it, it is a huge headache because you have to pay to get it
You have to pay, you have to
safely
get it approved, all
transported
those kinds of
somewhere
things.
else. What a nightmare.
No,
That's
we will
too
not
bad.
have one
I was
of those.
hoping you'd have like 15 of them at your house.
No.
Just
No.
like an obstacle course every time
I'm-
you try to go
so,
in the yard.
And some of you know this. So our youngest son is big. He's big into outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
environmental stuff, all these kinds of things. So he's been researching the kinds of plants that I can
Of course he has.
put
Of
in
course
my
he
yard.
has.
And I love the landscape. So
Yeah.
I love the fact he's researching.
I was
He's
gonna say,
telling me
that's
all these
amazing
kinds of
for you.
things. So I've already kind of decided that
Nice.
it's going to be like a mountain desert kind of landscape in the back. So there'll be some pines and those kinds of things, not cacti.
No cacti.
Nope.
Well, that's a shame.
I
You're not embracing Arizona
I-
properly.
well, yeah, because when I embrace Arizona, I don't want to come away with stuff stuck in me.
Holes
Yes.
all over yourself.
Yeah,
Now you have two boys.
we do.
They no longer live with you.
Nope. One still has a bedroom at home because he's in college full time, but he's not even coming home to help us move. So,
Oh man. Do you need to talk about that for the next 25
maybe,
minutes instead
maybe.
of this? How do they do on Mother's Day though? Are they?
they actually
Have you
love
trained
the
them
flower
well?
thing. And both of them have turned into great cooks. One's
Well, that doesn't help when
a
they're nowhere
great
near you.
baker, and one loves to do everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So the last couple of years they were home, and they were both home in like 2020 when we were all home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome for me because I took a nap. Kylie took a nap. They fixed everything, and then they pick out all the plants and all the flowers, and then we all plant them together, and they really enjoy that.
But I mean, more now that they're away, are they still intentional about Mother's Day? Have you drilled
One
into their
of them
brains
more than
you
the
need to-
other.
okay.
One of them.
Would you like to call one of them out by name?
No. No, because I would never embarrass Ian that way. And they don't listen.
But someone will text them.
Yeah, I was going to say
Someone will
tell
text
them.
them. Well, we do. I mean, we talked about it on the weekend,
Yep.
but we just want to once again say Happy Mother's Day.
Yep.
We love all the various mothers out there, and I not that it's the first time. In fact, I think it's kind of a staple of the Mother's Day messages I've heard from you and from my dad. But there's a lot of different emotions that come with Mother's Day, and for a lot of people, it's a super happy time.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's a really hard time, whether it's because of their own struggles,
Yep.
having children, or they've lost their mother, or maybe they just have a very
Some
difficult
people
relationship
want
with
to
their
avoid a
mom.
Mother's Day message
Yep.
because of those kinds
Yep.
of things. Yeah.
So it was a very, very good message, and I mean, I always encourage you to go check it out, but I definitely encourage you to go check this one out. Plus, it was the start of our new series, Celebrate.
yeah.
We
It's
haven't
one
had.
we try to do every May.
Sure.
Yeah.
It makes sense
Yeah.
with everything going on. But so we're going to tag off of the Mother's Day message, and you're going to tell us all how to be perfect parents, because you and Kylie were perfect parents. You raised two perfect children. So let us have it.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
It's actually one of my least favorite subjects to teach.
And
on.
have we done a parenting podcast?
Not. I was trying to remember.
I know
should
we've
have gone back
talked
and looked.
about
We've talked
parenting,
about
but
it,
I don't know if we've done
think
one
so.
whole
I think in the
podcast just about
past,
parenting. I'd have to check.
We've said we should someday. And
We've done
I've
98 of these. So
tried to avoid that.
I'm sure we've touched on it at some
Yeah.
point. But
But it's so hard because honestly, most people, whether the parents or not, don't give other parents grace. We give ourselves more
That's right,
grace than
yeah.
we don't give other others. Or like if someone's teaching on parenting, but they aren't a perfect parent, or you see something their kids do, it's like, well, then they have no right to teach on parenting, Or when it's taught, it's often taught in a very condescending way. If you don't do this,
Yeah.
then you're a bad parent. Or
Yeah.
if your children don't all make the right choices, then you're obviously not a very spiritual person. We kind of forget that, the God who created us perfect, and we still made bad choices.
Yeah.
So it's not like God is imperfect. We all have the opportunity to make choices that go against our Heavenly Father, and our kids have opportunity to make choices go against us. But the Bible talks a ton about parenting for a lot of those reasons, I've hesitated to teach on it. And I've always said I really didn't want to teach on it extensively until our kids were out of the house and we saw how badly we screwed them up first.
Right.
So then we could
can
teach
learn.
on it from the perspective of, here's all the ways I screwed up. Because we did. We screwed up a lot. I've got a good friend who you would know, Twyla. She actually used to be on our
Yep.
staff at New Hope. She said one of the best pieces of parenting advice she ever gave was, when your kids are born, start a bank account. Not for college, not for a house. It's a counseling fund so that once they get away from home, they've got money to fix all the things you screwed up. Like, that's not bad advice.
There's a comedian I heard once talking on that same thing, and he basically said, like, your parents love you, and they absolutely screwed up raising you.
Yeah, you just need to know that. And if you're a parent, you need to know you aren't going to get it all right. You aren't going to get it all right. So give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
And you say, well, then I'm going to screw up my kids. Well, I have good news for you. You will at some level.
Yeah.
You know, I have incredible parents, and I know you have incredible parents. But and if they were sitting in the room, and like I know your dad listens, there would be parts you'd say, I wish that
I would never see that.
yes, that they had done differently,
Sure.
that I've had to come out of. And they would probably say the same thing. I
Yeah.
know mine would.
Yeah.
I know your dad well enough. I'm pretty sure he would.
Okay, so
Yeah.
real quick, because I want to ask you, like, where are we going to start? But
Yep.
before I do
Yep.
that, what are you saying to the person who doesn't have kids and is like, I don't need to listen to this podcast on parenting? Because I remember being a youngster, not having kids, even when I was married and like I wanted kids one day. But even then, I was like, okay, another sermon on parenting.
Yeah.
Time for me to check out. I'll write some funny notes on my wife's sermon notes during this message.
I think a couple things. One, I thought that, and then I became a parent, and I'm
Sure.
like, man, I wish I had taken notes earlier and got prepared for that, even though you may never want to. And I think the other thing is, just because they're principles for how to raise kids doesn't mean they aren't principles that aren't transferable for how to lead in the workplace, how to live. In fact, one of the key things we're going to talk about is kind of a system we'll get to in a minute that I learned from a good friend and mentor of mine that I think applies to every area of life. It's one we've taught on extensively several years ago.
All right, so where do we start? You're going to fix us all as parents? Where we?
Well, I think for anybody, just to help you figure out what you want, ask yourself the question, what do you really want for your kids? What do you want? And write it down. Don't just stick it in your head.
Is it okay if the answer is them to make enough money where I can retire?
Yeah.
Like immediately?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the answer for all of us is, we want our kids to be healthy. We want them to be, whatever word you want to use for it, successful. And we all mean different things when we talk about successful. But we want them to do well. My friend puts it this way. We want them to live, and since we were talking sports earlier, we'll kind of lean on this metaphor.
You're using another sports analogy.
We want them to live kind of a home run kind of life, not just go, I just get on base once in a while. But we really want our kids to win in life. And what does that look like for you? Because what that looks like for you will depend how you parent. And I think, and here's what we need to talk about with this is you need to identify what you really want for your kids. Are you projecting what you missed out on? Or have you gotten your identity wrapped up in this, where what you're really wanting is for you to feel good about yourself instead of them growing up? We, in order to help our kids have that kind of life, there's two choices we have to make. We have to choose a value system, and we have to stick to that value system in the right manner. Because we all have a value system.
Sure.
But the way we pass it on, we don't always pass it on well or healthy. And we've all seen that.
Yeah. But, okay, so we have to pick a good value system.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, this is a Christian podcast, so we're going to talk about the Bible. But, like, I'm sure you've pastored for 32 years. I feel like I forget every single week.
Somewhere in there.
There's been a lot of people in your churches during that time who have had very different like value systems for their kids than you have had.
Yeah.
That you probably were like, that's a wonderful Christ following, family, but like I would not be doing. I know I have that. Like that we have friends where I'm like, I would not be doing what you're doing with your kids, and I'm sure that they think the same thing about us with our kids. So how do we?
Well, I think we need to
figure
break
that
that
value
apart.
system out?
So value system, let's look at the two words. Values are moral standards. And the Bible is real clear on core moral standards. I mean, things
Sure.
like the Ten Commandments. It's real clear.
The
We've walked-
non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I think are fairly clear. There are some things we turn into moral standards that the Bible doesn't say are moral standards.
So like when I was growing up, I'm 35.
Yeah, think about this for a minute.
35.
Okay.
I'm 35.
Senior moment.
Grew up in the 90s
Yeah.
when Harry Potter came out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe are you guys a Harry Potter family? Were your kids? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
not all of our extended family are.
Almost everyone in my church growing up would have been furious
Yeah.
with you for reading Harry. Like
Yeah.
that was like a huge deal when it first came out. But like so stuff like those are the kind of things where like sometimes, and not
Yeah.
even just an individual, but the church collectively will pick like this is the
Yeah.
thing that if you are raising your kids right is not a part of it.
Yeah.
And why is that a thing? Like why do we pick the this kid might end up like he's going to parties and
Yeah.
drinking and doing drugs and sleeping around, but he didn't read Harry Potter when he was in 4th grade, so I feel good about it. Like why are there certain things that we just focus on
And
so
here's
much?
where we get confused. We think with something like, let's say that, and we can apply it to other things. Here's another big lightning rod: education for our kids. Homeschool,
Yeah,
Christian
big time.
school, public school, and people listening to us, watching us, are very strongly opinion about that.
That's why I'm not sending
Well,
my kids to school at all.
Yeah.
We're just avoiding
We'll
them.
just avoid it. Well, here's the deal. Identify what the value is, okay? The value...
the moral standard.
Yeah,
like
the
you're
moral
saying.
standard is, say, for, at the heart of the Harry Potter thing is, the Bible talks a lot about, say, witchcraft, but what's really at the heart of that is who do we go to for the source and the trust of our life? And, one of the primary issues, in fact, the primary issue with witchcraft is you're turning yourself or someone other than God into the source of power for your life.
Okay.
So that's the value. Anything that you put in place of God is wrong, is sinful. How we apply that is a system,
Okay.
not a value.
Sure.
So education, the same kind of thing. There's a value there of, and I think it's a biblical value to, train up your
Sure.
children in the way they should go, to help them grow in wisdom. I mean, this is Proverbs all over again.
Yep.
But how you do that is a system that is somewhat contextual and that you get to choose as a parent. So and this is where we need to be very careful, and this is where it causes so much tension, is we start comparing our systems and put them in the same place as values.
Okay.
A system isn't completely biblically based. It's based in biblical values.
Yep.
But system is the application of it, and that can change. How we put our kids in public school, but there are certain places we would not put them in public school. But for where we were and who each one individually was, we felt like that was the system we applied. Was it perfect for them? No. But neither would the other choices been perfect
Yep.
for them. Same kind of
Sure.
thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I think part of that is and this is where what we want to talk about. A friend of mine wrote a fantastic book. Actually, he wrote 2 books. There was one that was for everybody called Home Run Life, and then he wrote this second book called Home Run Life for Kids that outlines a value system. So what it is helping your kids live life in the right order, because we tend to live life in the wrong order. And this is where we talk about choosing your system well, because honestly, we have values, but we apply them in the wrong order
Sure.
when you think about this. So, and basically, a home run life, he uses just the image of baseball. I'm speaking your language now.
Yeah, well, if you want to keep talking about baseball,
Yeah.
this is going to be a long podcast. Let me tell you why Kirby Puckett is the greatest Minnesota Twin of all time. 2 World Series.
Yeah. Okay.
sorry.
We're going to get back to spiritual. But think of a baseball diamond. So you start where? What base do you always start at, and what base do you always finish at?
Well, are we assuming? Oh, like at home plate, like I'm
Baseball.
up to bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start at home. And how do you score? You have to get back home. Do you score after you hit the ball running to third base and back to home, even though it would be the shortest?
If you play baseball with Leighton when he was 4 last summer,
That's called Little League.
do.
But yet,
If not, then no.
when
do
you
not.
understand the order of how God designed life,
Sure.
most of us play by the Little League rules. Because it all starts and finishes at home plate. We're designed, so home plate, my friend Kevin Myers, I'll give credit to him, fantastic author and thinker and writer, says it all starts and ends with your relationship with your creator. That's home plate.
Mm-hmm.
First plate is...
First base?
First base, I'm sorry. is...
I love when you do
Yeah,
sports
you love
analogies.
is character.
First base is character. Okay.
So you start with loving God, and as you love God, it's to grow you up. Okay? Second base
Nailed it. First try.
is about relationships.
Okay.
Third base is about career or success.
Okay.
And then you bring it all back home.
Mm-hmm.
What do we normally do when we're raising? We're raising our kids to do what? To go out and be successful where? In the marketplace. And if you're successful in the marketplace, we assume that you're going to be successful with friendship. We run
Sure.
the bases backwards. And we parent that way. We don't think about it that way, but what do we, most of our world, and I'm picking on all of us, including me, most of our world, when we parent with success in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we want our kids to be successful at whatever sport, and we'll compromise other things without even thinking. So you've got to, when you're parenting, think about the value system. Start and end with your creator. You start with character, and that may mean you sacrifice some things that the world calls successful at first in order to run this the right way. So, and as you're running the races, so what that means then is as you're growing your kids, you prioritize this. So when it comes to discipline, we tend to want to lean to more for disciplining for outward behavior than attitudes. But character is all about attitude.
Yep.
It's an attitude that drives the outward behavior. So we will get all over some kind of wrong thing that they did out, in front of people. And a lot of it, honestly, is because of the outward kind of thing, the third base kind of thing,
how we look
as a parent.
Yep.
Instead of this, So like with our kids, we didn't do it well all the time. We didn't do it perfectly all the time, but they seem to. I've asked them recently, how do we do it this? We would discipline much more strongly around a bad attitude. And about things that were character, like integrity. You lie to me, we're going to discipline that all day long. Why? Because if I can't trust you in a little thing, I can't trust you with a big thing. Instead of, talking about performance. So did I want them, our kids were musical, did I want them to practice their piano well? Yeah, I did. But we didn't put as much emphasis on that as when I asked them if they practiced their piano well and they lied to me, they're going to get grounded for that one.
Yeah.
If they didn't practice piano but they told me, it's like, okay, we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
So make sure you're running the bases well. So it's character first, and then relationships. Pay attention to your kids' relationships far more than you pay attention to even what we would deem as success kinds of things. The spiritual discipline, the spiritual habit, especially of preteens and teenagers, let me put it this way. The primary way that we are spiritually formed in any area, but especially preteen and teen, is through our friendships. Now, again, how we apply our systems matters. So what some people do is, okay, then I'm going to choose all my friends for my kids. When was the last time somebody choosing a friend for you worked well? It's never worked well.
Yeah.
But
you made Michael work with me, and then we started playing tennis, and that kind of worked out. So maybe that's
as
the
long
only
as
time.
you win.
Otherwise I would throw a fit, obviously.
But here's what you can do. You can, and my parents actually did this incredibly well. You can provide all kinds of environments for you to get to know your kids' friends and for them to connect with friends who will make a positive impact on them. So one of the things for us, youth group, as long as the youth group, was healthy for them, because it wasn't always, was non-compromisable. You don't get to miss youth group except in extremely rare circumstances for a school activity. School activities are important, but they're also third base.
Sure.
Second base comes before third base. Home plate comes before everything. So you don't get to miss youth group. People say, well, that's very legalistic. No, we're cultivating.
Yeah.
Cultivating this.
Well, I think that goes back to, you were saying we need to pick a value system and then we need to stick to it in the right way. But that, it's interesting. Joanne and I were just having this conversation because Layton's T-ball for this year starts the same week as VBS.
Yeah.
And his first 2 practices will be during VBS. And Joanna was just like, well, we're going to pay for these practices and then he's going to miss it. And we've talked on here before about how my parents had that, like, I was not allowed to miss a Sunday morning for sports. And it, like, at times it hindered me from being on a team that I had earned the right to be on, but they didn't choose me because of, they were worried about the Sunday morning thing, even though go to the first service and I could, but anyway, we don't need to get started on that. But because my parents had that value system and they stuck to it in the right way, it was never like a punishment. It was never, you don't get to go to sports today. Right. It was, this is a priority, and they made sure I understood why. Even me as like the sports guy, I was like, well, he's obviously going to VBS. Like he can miss his first 2 T-ball practices. Yeah. And that's not because I'm like this tremendous saint. We're friends. Yeah. You're very aware of that. Yeah. Nor am I a perfect father. But it was just like my parents had that value system for me, and I learned it. And it's such as natural for me to have those priorities in the right order. Yeah. Again, not in everything, but in this one specific area, that's easy for me now because my parents had it in the right order for them. They had the bases in the correct order.
I think there's a couple things we need to remember that is, first of all, pay attention to how we approach it. My attitude and my vocabulary
that's big.
Affects theirs.
Very much so.
So if it's, okay, we have to go to church and then you get to go to practice. Yep. Oops, what am I communicating? I'm communicating third base is more important than home plate or, these others. When I talk about church or the people at church in a negative sense, not that I pretend they're all perfect, but when I talk about them in a negative sense or whatever, what am I doing? I'm communicating to my kids that it really doesn't matter.
Yep.
I think the second thing to remember is at first, and we're actually going to talk about this on the weekend next week where we celebrate students, but it's going to be for all of us, is our kids will learn their faith from us until they have a personal experience of their own.
Yep.
So they will always be one chair more distant from God until they have a personal experience. So the closer you are to God, the closer your kids will be to the Lord in that second chair until they have their own personal experience. Yeah. And if you allow and make choices that intentionally distance them from God, then don't be surprised when they go off to college that they walk away because, well, it wasn't important enough for me to go. Other things were more important.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about church attendance. Okay, I'm talking about having that personal relationship with God. Yeah. And that personal relationship with God, and I'm going to go after this a little bit because I had someone recently say, well, church is wherever I am. It's in my heart. Okay. We've talked about that to some extent.
We don't have 4 hours here, Pastor Mike.
Okay. But yes, you are the church.
Yep.
But you're part of the church.
Yep.
You need the church.
Yep.
And if you teach your kids that they don't need the church, they're going to walk away from the church. Yep. If they walk away from the church, they will walk away from God even though they still believe in him. Mm-hmm. You're helping them make that choice.
Yeah. Let's get back to because I don't want to go. We're already kind of where we normally go, but we got more to talk about, so we're going to get to it. But let's apply it a little bit. Let's go back to kind of that goal of parenting. What like our goal with our kids.
I think the big thing we need to remember, and this is a basic thing, but it's so big. Remember, you are not raising children. You're raising adults.
I don't think you've met my 5 and 3-year-old.
So. There are some things right now. It's like
see what you're saying.
They're 3 years old. They're 5 years old. There are behaviors that are normal in a 3 and 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Not that they're excusable, but you're raising adults. So I'm willing. Sometimes we put up with things because we say to ourselves, "Oh, they're 5. I'll put up with a bad attitude because they're 5. Well, he's 5. I'll give him an excuse." No. You're raising an adult. So what kind of adult do you want this child to be? Now, doesn't mean he needs to act like an adult as a 5-year-old. but he can begin to learn at an
Yeah.
appropriate level what a good attitude is.
But what if I'm tired?
That is the greatest single challenge
Yeah,
of parenting.
For real.
Is being consistent.
Yeah. Yep.
And when you make compromises, especially when you're tired, and oh man, that's so easy to do. So easy to do. What you're doing, though, is you're sending the messages that there are times that compromise is okay.
Yeah.
And your kids will learn this.
Yeah, they'll pick up on it.
Yeah. And will we all make mistakes when we're tired and compromise? Yes. But consistency is the
Right.
key. So let's go back to our sports analogy. You know, they call it a batting average because no one has a perfect batting average.
true.
Right? You're going to strike out sometimes. But what's the goal of a batting average? To get it higher. So you're hitting the ball more than you're missing the ball, right? And it's the same is true as a parent. So you're hitting more than you're missing. Are you proud of me for that one?
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
You have some character values in here that I want you to touch on real quick.
When we talk about attitude, there's some attitudes that I think are more important than others.
Yeah.
And I think these are biblical values. Gratitude, this is a big one. My circumstances do not dictate my attitude. I dictate my attitude. So teaching your kids a positive attitude. Herm Albright is his name. He said, a positive attitude may not solve all your problems, but it will annoy enough people to make it worth the effort. I love that quote.
That's okay. So this is just me asking
Yeah.
for personal parenting advice. You guys can listen along if you want to. That's one of the. No, it's not one to one from that, but we talk a lot with both of our kids because our youngest is getting to the point where we can have that. She can kind of understand that, where we try to teach them like the emotions you're feeling aren't the wrong thing. It's when you're letting those emotions control your actions. So like Leighton is obsessed with sports right now. I mean, obsessed with sports. So it's not even if his team loses. If the other team gets a hit, you know, if the White Sox get a hit off the Twins, it might set him off and he, you know, starts pouting and getting angry or whatever. And he's being intentional about fixing it, but we constantly are having that conversation. It's okay to feel sad when the Vikings lose. You're going to feel that for the rest of your life as a Vikings fan, buddy. But you can't let that emotion dictate your actions, and now your actions are becoming a problem because you're being mean to mom or you're throwing a fit or whatever. But do you have a tip for how to get
and this
that
is
through
where
to a kid?
systems come into play, and different systems will apply honestly to different personalities. I had a huge temper as a child.
Did you make your 5-year-olds take a personality test?
No.
I know you love personality tests.
But I had a huge temper as a child. So my parents had to work with me on my temper. I had to learn different skills than my sister had to learn because she didn't have a huge temper.
Yep.
She hit it. That was a different set of things.
Did she listen to the podcast?
Yeah, I had to learn, how to control that temper. So some of this is just identifying who your child is, and help them learn some skills.
Yeah.
I think part of this is like when you cultivate gratitude, one of the biggest things is learn to say no to your kids. It doesn't mean you don't give them what they want sometimes, but I think we should always maybe give them a little less than they want.
Sure.
Because what are we doing? To cultivate that attitude of gratitude with those kinds of things.
That's a good rhyme.
Yeah,
It's good
you like that
alliteration.
one. It's a good
All right,
one.
gratitude is the first one.
Second one, integrity. And what we tell our kids, if you lie, you will lose. And you can say that's biblical or whatever. No, that's just the reason that's true is because it's true. Whether you believe in God or the Bible or not, if you lie, you will lose.
Yeah.
And we always think, my friend said this way, we think that compromising the truth will deliver happy, but it will always dig you a hole. It will always dig you a hole. If you lie, you will lose. So like for us, we did our best. Reward or discipline integrity issues more than almost anything else. If I can trust that they'll do what they say, if I can't trust that they'll do what they say, then I can't trust them in other things.
Right.
So people have asked us if our kids had curfews. They didn't. They didn't have curfews because by the time we got there, and not every child is this way, so I'm not saying our kids are. By the time they got there, we had developed this high trust. Did they violate that once or twice? Yes, and they lost that. They lost that privilege for a while.
Yep.
But part of this is just self-control. Again, your feelings don't determine your decisions. And along with this comes the third one: responsibility. One choice always leads to another choice. So I think some of the things that I think there's one theologian, one parenting expert says this: don't always protect your children from pain. That's hard.
Really hard.
I always thought it would be harder once they left home. I find it's harder than it was when they were younger. Because when I was younger, I could let them. I could not protect them, but then I could be there. Now it's like, yeah, you overspent, your bank account's overspent. Yeah, you might. Whatever. Sucks to be you, but I can hang up. But it's just hard. It's painful. Don't solve all your kids' problems. Let them solve problems. Don't do everything for them. At a certain age, they need to start doing their clothes. They're washing their clothes.
Not making them.
Give them.
I thought you made Ian and Brendan make their own clothing.
Making their clothes. Give them a bank account.
That's a big one.
I had a friend that taught us this. They had 5 kids, and when their kids turned 13, they would give them a certain amount of money at the beginning of every month. But the agreement is, from now on, maybe for birthdays and Christmas, you might get some clothes from us or special things from us. But we aren't buying your clothes anymore. I mean, we're paying them. We're giving them to you.
Right.
And if you want that pair of whatever, you've got to save that up.
Yeah.
And if we're in the grocery line at whatever store and you want that, you don't ask for that anymore because you have money. And you let them not be able to buy some of those things, but you cultivate that. And I think the last thing is you just cultivate your friendships as much as they can. Get to know their friends.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the cool dad and cool mom, but try and provide opportunities. My parents would we lived in a fairly remote area like Wilson, they'd find great concerts. And they would talk to other kids that they kind of wanted me to hang around with.
Sure.
And their parents, and they'd put together trips to take us all to these concerts. So we would drive from Montana to Illinois for a concert and a conference with 2 cars full of kids. And when you're in a car for that long, you get to know these kids, even if you don't like them at first. Yep. And some of my lifelong friendships came out of that.
Yeah. Or even just, finding friends of your own that are high character people, that have, Christ following people that are raising their kids that way too. And it's like, it's not, okay, you have to be Timmy's best friend for the rest of your life, but it is going to be, we're going to hang out with this family every other week. And so you're going to be spending time with him every, I know for me, now some of them were my closest friends, but we just had a variety of friends these were my parents' closest friends. And we were going over to their house this night, whether I wanted to or not. And so I was going to hang out with those kids. And they weren't like the people with the terrible kids that my parents didn't want me around, obviously, So that's an interesting way to do it.
One of the phrases we used to use is we helped our kids describe what we call big circle and little circle.
Okay.
So little circle are your closest friends that you let influence you.
Sure.
Big circle are friends that you value, but they don't get to influence your choices. And so what you're teaching them is, I value you, but I'm not embracing your values.
Sure.
Which our culture doesn't know how to do that.
That's very foreign in our culture.
In fact, I had to have a confrontation actually with a parent one time who one of my kids said to his son something about that. It's like, no, when you do that, I'm not going to hang out with you. And my dad tells me I don't have to hang out with you. And his dad came to me and said, did you tell your son not to hang out with my kid? I'm like, I told my son not to hang out with your kid when he does this because he can choose who will influence him and who won't. So you're telling me that my kid's a bad kid. That's not what I said. I said he's going to choose different values than your kid, but he never understood that. And
of course, that was of course Ian.
No.
Good for Brendan. That just seems like an Ian person. Just like, I do not have to be around you while you're doing this thing. I can just hear Ian saying that. Good for Brendan. All right. We've gone over. Is there anything else you want to touch on at the end? Do you have a next step for us this week? Anything like that?
I think a next step is sit down as a parent, or if you aren't a parent, and map out those bases. And are you in your life or in your parenting, are you putting things in the right order, or are you playing Little League?
Yeah.
What are you going for? Are you going for third base before first base? And think about that.
That's good, Pastor Mike. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being with us for this parenting podcast that went. There's a lot to talk about in parenting.
There is.
So we're going to go a little longer this week. But this was episode 98. We're so glad that you're here. I hope you're joining us on the weekends at one of our gatherings, whether in Williston, Tioga, or New Hope here.
Yep.
For some reason, it's
Yeah,
like,
think
what's
about
the
that
third
for a
one?
minute.
Oh, the one I work at. Yeah, New Hope here. It's been a long day. Pastor
Yeah.
Aaron was here. It just makes me tired.
Yes.
Yeah. Next week's podcast will be on how to deal with Pastor Aaron. It'll be for the.
It's actually going to be about how to stabilize your life when things are unstable, so it fits.
We love you, Pastor Aaron. And we love all of you. We hope that you'll be here with us next week. And we will see you then.